Hey everyone, I'm going to be sharing an experience that I would see repeatedly in my many years working in hospice and palliative care. And it's a very interesting phenomenon and also tells us and really shows us how our emotional health really does impact our physical health and well-being. I will go into more stories later about this, but I'm just going to stick with this one example for now. Hi, my name is Abigail. I'm here to normalize these conversations and education about death and dying so we die better at end of life. Let's get into it today. There is this phenomenon, and it actually has a diagnosis code in the medical system called broken heart syndrome. And it's something where you can die from it. It's also something where if treated promptly and not just physically, but also holistically through other emotional, mental type of supportive therapies, can help the person to recover okay. And it depends on the extent to which, all of these other factors have played in. The link between depression, other emotional type of stress factors, and cardiac health and physical health is not really news to us anymore. We are understanding more and more and more that there is just this strong link amongst all of these components of us. And I need to just stress this because I thought, at least for the longest time, and I think many people still do the same, where you kind of downplay this, the attention towards our mental, emotional health and well-being. We are hyper-focused on our physical well-being. When we look at health and all of our changes that we're making for health, we tend to really hyper-focus on the workouts that we do, the food that we're eating, and this is fantastic. All of these things are great to be able to commit to taking care of your physical health. However, we are seeing more and more how mental health, mental well-being is just as important. Our emotional well-being is just as important. I learned this through my own journey with serious illness. And it wasn't until I started targeting and intentionally focusing and getting treatment for my own emotional health, my past, my PTSD, all these things, that I started to turn more and accelerate my healing physically, because a lot of that I think had to do with, and what the professionals say had to do with a lot of either, past traumas and also prolonged episodes of long-term stress, particularly from the way I was working like a maniac. It was very stupid the way I was doing it. So I bring this up because I'm going to tell you what I see in hospice, and then again, circle back to what this means for you. In hospice and palliative care in particular, when we would come across some of these couples that were together for like 50, 60, 70 years, incredible, whether they were, legally married or not, they were in some kind of partnership, or, parents especially losing children. We were really particularly aware of how these big stressful types of losses can impact the health and well-being of these people who are experiencing these really profound losses. And again, death of anybody, a loss of anything in life is huge. So I'm not putting this on any kind of gradient or scale. This is something that in this reference that I'm talking about, especially with broken heart syndrome and things like that, related things, I'm just telling you what I saw specifically in hospice and palliative care, and I'll go into this a little bit more so that we can cover, what this means again for everybody. We would see that once one of the partners died in that partnership, in that relationship, we would we keep an eye on the other person, obviously, for, regular grievance and not grievance, for regular grieving type of needs. We would keep an eye on that person who experienced a loss for grieving needs. But it was interesting to see how usually within a week's or month's time, we were bringing the person who survived, the partner who survived and was still alive, we would be bringing them on hospice, like within weeks or months after they experienced the loss of their loved one. And what we would see is that this person, once they experience that loss of that loved one, they would die usually within 6 months. And this is not something that's unusual. We would have these conversations in our hospice company, in our weekly meetings. We'd have these conversations saying, oh, so we lost so-and-so this week. Let's keep an eye on their partner, their spouse, whatever it is, their loved one, so-and-so, because, they've been together for so long. This is such a big hit on that person. We may be bringing the other person back on bringing them on hospice, or they may be dying soon suddenly. So we need to really prepare the other family members for this loss as well. I've had friends who had, lost a parent, and they experienced loss of another parent in that same year. It's huge loss, huge loss. So I bring these stories up because this is really, really important for us to understand what the other physical ramifications are when we deal with loss. And there are physical ramifications, there are physical things that happen when we are dealing with loss. The stress that is put on our system mentally and emotionally is huge. And these mental and emotional type of experiences through stress, through loss, create other types of reactions in your physical body. When we talk about stress, for example, our body will do things like do funky things with cortisol. It would increase the cortisol. That in itself has, a lot of changes that it does if stress is prolonged over time and it's complicated with other factors with loss and things like that, not getting enough sleep, things like that. And it does impact your sleep, it impacts your digestion, it impacts your blood sugar, all these types of things. And when you have it over a prolonged period of time, then you start to develop other chronic types of issues. So when they say that stress kills, that is actually a real thing. And I learned that also the hard way too, when I got really sick. I can go into that on another video. I really want to talk about these loved ones who are survivors of a person that they loved and they died. So what does this mean for you? It means that when a loved one experiences a loss through death, you hopefully you had hospice care. And if you don't, you can, call a hospice company and find out what other types of grieving type of services that are available in your area or online. Everyone should always have access to this type of care for their emotional and mental health, working with a therapist, things like that. And again, if you can't work with a therapist, if you don't have the financial means, contact your hospice and palliative care, if you've dealt with a loss through death, and ask them for community resources, because they're oftentimes are able to provide you with information on that. It is critical. It's critical that you not only do the things to take proper care of your physical self, make sure that you're eating, make sure that you're hydrating, make sure that you're moving your body, make sure that you're resting, but you're doing things to process your loss and your grief in a healthy way. And if you don't do that, then you will have a lot of physical issues that come up. This broken heart syndrome in particular looks and kind of presents like a heart attack. It usually has some issues like what a heart attack would look like, with pain, poor circulation to the heart and other parts of the body. It could have things like pulmonary edema, where you have swelling, you have fluid in the lungs. It could look like a rupture of one of the ventricles, which is basically a part of the heart, one of those pockets of the heart that moves blood through it. The heart has 4 chambers. So one of those chambers, one of those ventricles, those lower chambers, can actually rupture. And as you can imagine, any closed system, if you have a rupture, it's not going to work as well. And there could be some serious complications. So these are things that actually happen through major loss and experiences with stress. There are real ramifications and things that can happen when somebody experiences a huge loss and the stress that comes along with it. So what this means for you, and not just now, again, obviously with loss, but just in your life in general, please take the necessary steps that you need to make to protect your physical health, not only with eating and moving and all that kind of stuff, but really paying attention to your mental and emotional health and getting the right treatment for whatever it is that you need to process, learning how to healthfully and learning how to process your emotions in the most healthful way, and how to get in touch with your emotional parts of yourself and processing them in a very, very healthy way. And again, ideally, you want to work with a therapist, a certified licensed professional, to help you individually learn how to develop these skills and move through any types of challenges that you're having with the right assistance. And if you don't have that available to you, if you experienced death with a family member, a loved one, contact a hospice provider in your area and find out what they have is available for community resources, what they can point you to. Some hospices have some types of grieving and bereavement types of groups that they may offer to the community, but they can also give you and point you to other aspects in your community that can be good resources. So never deal with this stuff alone. Let me know if you have questions. The whole dying process itself is, when you're losing somebody, is already so much. And then afterwards, dealing with the loss, a lot of other unexpected things can pop up. So we need to make sure that we're preparing ourselves and we're getting these things in place so that we can take care of ourselves properly when this happens, because inevitably it does happen to all of us. I'm thinking of you. Thank you for joining in. I love you. Let's continue to normalize these conversations and education about death and dying so we die better at end of life. I'm Abigail. I'll talk to you soon.